recording going and let him know. Got it. All right, so there's that. We are now recording, and I'm going to go ahead and also drop the closed captioning directions into the thing if you need that. As I always like to make sure that we share those with you. Thinking about it. There you go. And those are going to be those closed captioning directions. So again, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Connecting with Text using technology. This is going to be hopefully a session that you can walk away with some things that you can implement and share with your staff right away. That is, of course, always our goal. And the idea behind this certainly is, let's face it, we're heading into testing season. And so what are some ways that we can have our students interact with our text across our content areas and make it more interactive, because that is going to, of course, benefit them. It's going to benefit us as we're able to see what they are doing a little bit more. So as we go through, this is going to be very hands-on, just to give you that heads up. So like I said, if you can hop into that Lumio for this first half, we'll then jump over into Nearpod about halfway through. So when it comes to working with our students, we all love our Google Slides. Okay, they got us through the pandemic. For those of us that were teaching during that pandemic, I mean, they were our lifeline, right? That was how we did so much with our students. They're very easy to use, and students know it. So it's always sort of our fallback. We know so many of our curricular materials are placed into Google Slides because it has one of those lowest common denominators. But when it comes to our lesson delivery, when it comes to having our students connect with text, there are better options, because Lumio is designed, hold on, I gotta get my mouse over. I am not presenting at my desk today, y'all, so my setup's a little different here. But Google Slides is designed for stand and deliver style presentations. It's not designed for that facilitation or that training piece that we just learned about in the keynote. So we want something that's going to be a little bit more interactive with our students, that's going to give us some different opportunities. So when we think about working with our students, that lesson delivery, we want things that are going to have more interactive features, right? We want all student response. We want their ability to mark up the text, because if we have them connecting with the text, they need to have that text in front of them in a very easily accessible way. And when we think about Google Slides displayed on our smart boards, who's really interacting with that? It's usually us as the teacher. Maybe one student is coming up and marking up the text. So we really want all of our students to have that ability, so they can find that deeper meaning and really be able to work with what we're giving them. Gamification is always a fun way to get the students engaged and thinking about what they're learning about. So we want something that's going to have that type of feature, as well as the quizzes and the polls. There's nothing more beneficial, I think all of us can agree, is having that immediate feedback to see, hey, this is something I might need to go back and reteach. This might be something that, hey, I can move a little bit faster on and go forward. And so having a platform like Lumio or Nearpod that gives us the ability to embed those quizzes and polls so we can move forward is going to help us as we continue on throughout that lesson, or plan for our extensions and our reteaching. From a teacher standpoint, we obviously don't want to start from scratch. Nobody wants that, right? We want to work smarter, not harder. So we need platforms that allow us to take our Google Slides that we have, that we already exist, and easily give those to our students in a more interactive way. We want to see all the student work. One of the big things we hear all the time with those Google Slides is, hey, you know, every student has a slide they can work on. So I can have them interact with that text. But how many of us have had that instance where little Johnny has ended up on, you know, Kerri's slide and done something they shouldn't have done, and everyone gets a little confused. So being able to make sure every student has their own workspace while they're working with the materials that we're giving them is going to be certainly important. We want everything to be saved. Hey, I use the dry erase boards in my classroom all of the time. As a way that I could get that quick assessment around the room. But, you know, it's always nice to be able to go back and actually see what they've done. They have their reading journals. They're going to have their science journals and things like that where we have them recording. but we then have to go dig in the desks in order to find that information. So having it in a platform that allows us to go back and look at it from that saved work, but also from a data standpoint, as we think about our school improvement plans, as we think about SLOs, it's nice to have that in a location for us. Self-grading and checking, hey, can't go wrong with that, right? So anytime we have that ability, it's going to cut down that workload a little bit. We want that easy student access. We don't want to waste our instructional time getting the kids logged in and trying to find the different files and the different links that they may need. We want a one and done type scenario. And this is a big one. We need to be using things that are AACPS approved and supported. You're going to get I've said this before, we get a lot more bang for a buck when we're working with programs like Lumio or Nearpod or Adobe or Wixie, when you have the power of 90,000 accounts behind you versus that one-off maybe Kahoot account. They don't care about you. You're going to get a much faster response and turnaround with using something that we support here. Plus you have all of the resources from OIT as well. So those are going to be some of those things that we look at. And, again, it comes as no surprise. You're here. When it comes down to our options, Lumio and Nearpod are going to be our great lesson delivery system that we can use that's going to allow our students to really interact with the text. And what I'm going to get into here in just a minute is I've actually pulled some examples specifically from our curricular materials, grades 2nd through 5th grade, so that you can see what some of those would look like within these platforms. And I'll briefly talk about how I did them. But again, the idea is just here, what can we do with what we already have to have our students be able to get a little bit more with that text. This is a link down here. If you've ever taken or done a Lumio or Nearpod session with us, you probably have seen this document. It really lays out the differences between Nearpod and Lumio. We often get asked, why do we have both? Kerri, they're very, very similar. And they are very similar, but there are a couple of key differences between the two that I just want to highlight. I'm not going to read this to you. Y'all are intelligent adults. You can go through and go through this on your own. But really, they both have their differences. That is why we have them both. And it really comes down to what's going to work best for your lesson. So for example, one thing that we love about Lumio that we don't have in Nearpod is the ability to send out a group activity. Whether it's a graphic organizer, whether it's going to be a universal whiteboard that we want everyone to be on, we have the ability to send that out whole class as well as within individual groups. We don't have that functionality in Nearpod. So if you're going to be working with something where you want to break your students down into groups, Lumio is a fantastic option for that. What we also like about Lumio is going to be very easily for students. You can start it whole group, and then you can push it out and have them complete it independently, and their work stays. So they're going to be able to see not only their work, but also your annotations. So that if you, again, are doing it, when we think about that I do, you do, we do type scenario in our classrooms, they then still have your notes and annotations that they can go back and look at, example problems, things like that. With Nearpod, we like the ability, as you saw in the keynote, you're going to see it again here in a few moments, where you can turn a selection of the slides into a self-paced activity. So again, you can do your modeling of the lesson and then have them go through maybe 3-4 slides independently and work with the content or the text, and then bring them back into the teacher-led slides. So that's a functionality within Nearpod that we really like. Nearpod is also going to have, and we're not going to get into it today. I know many of you have seen it, so I opted not to dwell on it today. But that ability to have the embedded videos with the questions and embed those questions within those Nearpods. And when we think about text, I do want to make that point. Our Common Core standards do say that text is not just text and not just written words on a page. It's graphs, it's charts, it's videos, it is audio. It's having our students be able to gain meaning from all of those. So that's going to be a functionality of Nearpod that we particularly like. And there are others, but those are just a couple of highlights. Sure. So this is something, and you should all have this coming out on your screen now as an independent handout. So let's actually delve into some specific curricular examples. So this particular one is from grade 4 in theme 3. Teaching point number 4, main idea and details. And I specifically chose this one for a couple of reasons. One, Artful thinking. We do artful thinking. We know it is throughout our curriculum, whether it's in reading, science, social studies. It's something that we see quite often. But I also picked it because it's main idea and details. And as my fifth grader actually just told me this week, man, Mom, we all really have a hard time with main idea and details. It doesn't really seem to matter what grade level we are. They all struggle with it. So artful thinking is certainly something that we do a lot of. And so with this excuse me, particular example. This is something that ordinarily the teacher yourselves would be showing under the document camera or just on that Google slide. And maybe you're going through and circling and annotating what's going on. But why not push that out to our students, particularly because this is something that we do on a routine basis? Our students are familiar enough with the process that they can handle doing this on their own. So in this example here, what's happening in the picture? Each one of you have the ability to go in here. You have your tools over on that right-hand side, excuse me, left-hand side, and you can circle the details independent of one another. So this is a great, let's flip it around a little bit. Let's have the students do the upfront, and then we'll go back and debrief together. And because I'm in Lumio, I'm going to have the ability to go in and select any one of your names and see what it is that you have started to circle. So right away, I can get that immediate feedback of, hey, I need to really focus on, they're not noticing that the flood is happening in the background, or, oh, they're all picking up that there's lightning going on here. The other benefit, again, to using these types of programs is going to be letting the kids know that they're on the right track or that they need maybe to go back and rethink. So remember here again in Lumio, I can come in here, and even though this is going to be Desiree's page, I can come in and leave her some feedback. I can go ahead and leave a check mark, or do a little star. That's kind of hard to see over that area. But she is seeing this immediately on her screen and knowing, hey, yes, I'm on the right track. And I can very easily toggle through all of yous. Here I am on Dr. Garlick's page, and see, hey, they haven't done, sorry, Dr. Garlick, I know you didn't realize I was going to do this, but you can say, hey, so-and-so, I need you to make sure that you're on task here. Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? So you're going to have that ability also from a classroom management perspective to make sure that your students are going to be actively engaged in that activity. So I happen to really like this one. Again, we use artful thinking. I kind of was going back and forth between looking at the main idea and details versus one that with lacrosse sticks. I think it's from third grade at some point, or second grade with their curriculum, with an I think, I wonder. That would be another great opportunity to give the students within Lumio or Nearpod, you could do this in either activity, and have them mark up these illustrations, these portraits, these paintings that we're using with them. Now, as a follow-up, again, kind of going back, here is our lesson. This is their marking, they're circling, they're doing what they need to do. But now I can actually turn this something very similar to an A-B style question and throw out that poll of what is the main idea of this picture. I only gave you 3 choices. I figured you all could figure this one out. But again, I can see that immediate live results. And I will tell you, I was in a first grade classroom about 3 weeks ago, right around Valentine's Day. And we were doing a very similar type activity. They had the pictures of the book. They were marking it up to find multiple meaning words, or not multiple meaning words, how the character was feeling in the text. And they got the greatest kick out of seeing the progress of the class and how quickly people were responding. And again, really from that perspective of, am I ready to move on? Do I need to go back? It's very easy for us to be able to see that with this. And again, because I'm going to be able to go back and take a look at it later on, I can reflect on, how did they do? Would they circle the correct details in that painting? And then how did they get that actual main idea question later? Because here, I can, of course, see those overalls, but I do have the ability when I'm finished to download the spreadsheet that is going to show me actually who responded specifically with which question. So again, when we think about data and we think about those SLOs and school improvement plans, I'm going to now be able to have that concrete data that I can use this with. So my students are connecting more with the text, and I have the information that I need to move forward. Before I go on, any questions about that? Amanda, I usually do the download at the end of the lesson. I stop it. As long as you don't relaunch the lesson, and which would clear out the results, you're going to be able to download it afterwards. Great question. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end that activity. And you can see when I end the activity, I have that ability to export results right here. So you can do it then. Honestly, they come down as an Excel spreadsheet, and you all know anything in Microsoft takes forever to download. So that's where I would say I'd wait till I'm completely finished and then be able to download it. Yes, Scarlett, what have you got for me?
Is that what you see when you download the data, or is there something else if there's more questions?
It actually comes down as a spreadsheet. And if there's more questions, then every question has a column going across the top of the page.
How do you get it? Do you click on that little
just as export results?
Okay, thanks.
Yep, export results for that one. Okay. Sarah, great question. So when it comes to Lumio, if you're going to teach multiple sections, you need to have a copy for each class. So what I have gotten into the habit of doing is when I have a session like this, I make a master and then I copy it and label it for whatever I'm using it for. That way I always have my blank version available to me. And then I have, whether it's for my 4 classes or the 3 days, 3 sessions I'm going to be running this particular PD, I have a copy for that one. Okay. And Dr. Garlick, a lot of that can be, remember, for our students, they have the touch screens. You actually probably have a touch screen on your laptop as well. Some of it, so that could be the issue that you're having with that one. And yes, Sarah, you can make folders. That's a new thing. Gotta love that organizational piece. Okay. And yes, you can share anything in Lumio. If you come up here, you can see I have my little hamburger menu. I have this ability to share. That's going to give you a link that you can share with your teammates or colleagues. Okay. Let's take a look at another example. All student response. We've talked about this before. Shout it out. It's a classic. It's been around for a while. If you've ever been in one of our Lumio sessions, we've talked about it, but I wanted to throw this one out again. Again, when we think about where we are and getting our students to really activate their prior knowledge, shout it out is going to be a great option for this one. This is actually a question. What questions do you have about museums? This is something that is in our 3rd grade social studies curriculum. And so 3rd grade, 2nd grade. I left my note card where I had all of this actually written down with the specific ones on there. I apologize. But this is a great way for our students to activate that prior knowledge. Obviously, I'm doing it here with this type of question. It's also great for math. Just throwing that idea out there for you. Okay, so where do museums get their artifacts? And what is nice and what I love about the shout it out is the ability as students are responding, you can then sort these responses. So if we have a lot of people have the same response, we can put them here, or these are all of these things that have in common. So then we start having that student discourse and that class discussion. So yes, we have our Chromebook sitting in front of us, and that can sometimes be, people sometimes feel like that's a barrier to those class type of discussions. But in this type of case, have them bring their Chromebooks up to the floor. Have it sit in lap, they can be typing, or have them do the response and then come up to the floor. And now we can come through here and we can start to sort and find those commonalities. What are we thinking? Maybe these are, again, our I see, I think, I wonders, but we're going to have that ability. One thing I do want to point out, I know sometimes it can be very small on the screen. If you click on it, it will blow it up large for you. Lumio Smart has actually told us as well that they're working on a new version of Shout It Out that's going to be sort of like a 2.0 version. So we're hoping to see that before the start of next school year. So, but you do have the ability to really make those larger. And again, you can sort them. You can have the students come up and sort them up on your board. It's really up to you. But again, just that idea that we have that all student response. And you can see that you'll be able to tell, who has responded. If I come over to my sides, over here, I can actually pull up and see what everyone, how many responses and contributions that you've done, and what everyone's little icon is. So I can identify who is doing what. What I also like is, again, if you have quiet students or little people who are less inclined to share their thoughts because they don't want to be embarrassed, you can make it anonymous as well. So it would be anonymous for students, but later on it would not be anonymous for you. You would have the ability to turn that off and on. So that's always a nice feature, particularly depending on the makeup of your class. Okay. So again, using that shout it out to activate that prior knowledge. Let's talk science here for a moment. Again, as I had said earlier, when we think about text, it's not just written words on a page. Sarah, you actually cannot. But what I would recommend, you can always just freeze your screen, freeze your projector, use that good old oldie but goodie. You could also certainly turn off the projector if you wanted to screen those answers before they pop up. Good question. So as I was saying, though, text includes our charts and our graphs. This is from a science lesson where they're talking about temperature. Again, directly from our curriculum. And the idea here is that they work together as teams in groups to be able to determine what they notice about these particular hourly graphs. Now, I can come in and very easily, we can have those groups within the Smart Notebook or within the Lumio activity. And what I like about this is I can even decide to do this on the fly. So I hit my little people here. And I can decide if I want this to be an individual handout, a group workspace, or even a whole class whiteboard. I'm going to go ahead and do a group workspace. And we're a large group here, so I'm going to go ahead. We'll go with 8 teams. And it's going to randomly generate these answers or generate the groups for me. I do have the ability to move people around, so I could swap 2 people if I needed to. If you just can't have those 2 students working together in a group because it's a disaster waiting to happen. You can go through and that you can do this. When I start that workspace, you're going to be able to work together in that space and make your thoughts. What I like about this, and you're like, okay, Kerri, but I could print this. I could have this copy they could gather around. Absolutely. But because the way I set this up, students can actually blow these up and see them a little bit more clearer if they need to. So from an accessibility standpoint, I can come in here. I'm on team 1 right now. But I can come in and I can make those graphs larger and smaller if I needed to. So I can really see what's going on. I can move them. I have them sitting here in their individual things, but maybe they want to move them around on the page and kind of line them up so they can line up the hours and the times a little bit better so they can draw those comparisons. They have that capability to do that. What I also like about this is actually in the specific lesson, it says the groups are supposed to bring up their charts and show them under the document camera and talk about what their conclusions were. Well, I don't need to do that here. They can still come up and talk about their conclusions. Obviously, we want that student discourse, but I don't have to waste that instructional time of having them bring it up underneath of the document camera and having them trip or something like that, or fight over whose copy is going to go underneath of the document camera. It's already going to be decided for them. And again, just like before, I have the ability to go through and check through each team's work and see where they are and what they're doing. So just having it in this format is actually going to cut down a little bit even on that instructional time that you might have. All right. And again, I just wanted to point out, in this slide deck or in this part of the Lumio, one thing that we love about this, you've noticed we've had teacher-led slides, we've had an independent slide, and now we've had a group slide. Okay, so from that standpoint, you don't have to have multiple links to multiple type documents to have the students interacting. It's all going to be within one option. So less things for you to have to manage. Next, the last thing here in Lumio before we jump over into Nearpod. One thing that, again, is throughout our curriculum is we do a lot with anchor charts. Now, bear with me, my drawing skills are a little lackluster, if we might put it that way. But this is from grade 3. It's teaching point 3. It's talking about how stories are like a roller coaster ride. We have our beginning, our middle, and our end, and it kind of follows this chart. Very poorly there, but you get the idea. But that's my point, is so many of our anchor charts and so many of our lessons say, okay, start this together as a class. Is that I do type thing. Now I'm going to have you do the we do, working together, and then you're going to do the you do. And it's having the students recreate something already, okay? Now, obviously, there is certainly benefit in having our students draw and type and do all of those things. But let's face it, some of these things can be difficult for our students to create. And that can take up the time and they can get very frustrated. And we certainly don't want our students frustrated. So we could, if we were talking about the story, we're going to say this is the beginning of the story, pretend I've put some details in there. We've done this part of it together. Now I want you to complete, we've talked about how up here at the beginning, we have our middle of the story. And I'm typing this because I'm not on my touch screen. So, and let's face it, trying to write words with my mouse is not going to be very easy to do. But one thing too is you all have working smartboards, and if they're not working, you need to put a ticket in. So you could actually be up at your board filling this information and writing it just like you would on an anchor chart. And you're going to get a couple of benefits. One, it's in front of every child on their screen. So from an accessibility perspective as well, those kids in the back of the room or the back of the group, they have no excuse for saying they're not going to be able to see it because it's right there in front of them. Okay. But the other benefit is now we've worked on this, pretend we filled this chart out. I can now come up here and turn this into an individual handout. So now you have what we have done together as a class, and you're not starting from scratch. Okay, talk about a time saver. Think about that with our students as well. All right, so you can start something and then push it out to them, and they aren't starting from the very beginning. Okay. So it's another reason that we really like Lumio for connecting with text. You know, you can start it together. This was a anchor chart, but it could be some text that you're marking up and highlighting and all of that. Now I want you to do something extra. I want you to do something beyond what I did. Okay. One last thing, let's talk about that gamification piece. I would be remiss if I did not talk about Monster Quiz. All right, we all love our Monster Quiz. It was interesting. Some of you are going through our self-paced course. That is the choice board course. And Jill, are you? I don't think Jill is in this one. One of the activities is you do a time to climb and you do a Monster Quiz and you ask your students which one you prefer. Hands down, this was middle schoolers. They all liked Monster Quiz better than time to climb. I'm just saying, it's hard to resist the monsters, okay? This particular example I have taken from social studies. We're going to go ahead and do this real quickly because, hey, who doesn't want to do a little monster quiz? It's only 5 questions. This was directly from the curriculum as well. These questions, the students are supposed to think about what public service would provide, or what public department would provide these particular services. And in the lesson, in the curriculum, it's all in little squares that the kids have to cut out. Now, I don't know about you all, but every time I used to have my students have to cut something out, about half the class couldn't find their scissors. You have all of the paper all over the floor that you're finding for days later, okay? Or they're losing their squares that they need to later on. So again, great for our younger students, fine motor. I'm not saying they shouldn't have that ability to cut things out, but every once in a while, you know, let's think here. I'm already presenting, I'm already doing something. Let's do it digitally instead. So I'm going to go ahead and start this quiz for you real quick. Do you know your public works offices? Coming down to the wire. Freezer burners appears to be our first one's done. Who's coming in? Oh, boom boxers was number 2. All right. They love seeing all of their little monsters pop out of their boxes. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and end the quiz. And what I love about this, again, gets a little bit of, you know, healthy competition, but is a team-based thing, which is great. But again, it still doesn't detract from the ability for our students to have that discourse and that discussion afterwards. Because now I'm going to be able to go back. I can see my rankings here. Okay, well done, everybody. But when I do the class review, we can still talk about those questions and we can see what the right answers were. Why did, you know, maybe why would someone pick this versus this? So you can still have that healthy discussion. What I also like about doing it with something like Monster Quiz is you do have a timer ability. Okay, I had it set for 15 seconds because, you know, obviously 1, you're all adults, and 2, you know, we have other things to cover today. But that helps in that classroom management piece again, just to kind of keep everybody on track as we're going through, particularly with some of these activities, which can get rather lengthy because we need to cut things out or you know, do whatever. So I really like that ability too. So don't be afraid to take some of those things from the curriculum. And yes, it's a matching game or something like that. We have the ability in Lumio and Nearpod to turn those into different activities that might end up saving us a little bit of time in the long run, leaving us more time for that class discussion piece. So with that in mind, before I switch over to Nearpod, do we have any other questions? Can you add visuals to the questions? You can, yes. I didn't in this case, but you could do that. Sarah, Lumio works with immersive reader. So you would have the ability, specifically with Monster Quiz, I'd have to go through and play with it a little bit. I can't remember off the top of my head, but many of them will do the read aloud for them. This is digressing just ever so slightly, but one issue we've always had with Lumio and Nearpod is when if you upload sometimes Google Slides into these programs, the images become static and you can't edit them, and which that also means Immersive Reader will no longer read those. However, new within like the last month is in Lumio, if you can actually have the option to upload your Google Slides to the program, and they are editable. Did I say that right? Which means then all those individual text boxes can be read aloud by that immersive reader, as long as allowing you to edit and change things too. Okay. So any other questions before we jump over into the Nearpod? Bonnie.
Sorry about that. I just not great at typing and I didn't want to type.
You're good.
With Lumio, I just want to make sure I'm correct. It's only live. Like you can't give Lumio for homework like you could in Nearpod, correct? I just want to make sure I didn't miss something.
You absolutely can share a link with your students and have it be self-paced. So hold on, let me get out of my Monster Quiz here. So if you come over to the People tab, or the little People tab over here, I have the ability to swap this over to a student paste. I also have the ability under the 3 dots to do share. And when I do a share link, I can get obviously the one for teachers that we had already talked about, but you also have the one here to let the students work at the lesson on their own pace. So you could drop this link into Brightspace and would allow them to go through and either finish or start completely from scratch what you've done, which is a great option, especially for students who are absent. And that's what I made that point earlier about being able to do the annotations. They actually would see your work and see the annotations that you did as a class. And if you then take the link, those students who are absent actually get the benefit of that, of seeing what their classmates or what you have already done. Okay. Add the visuals, Monster Quiz. Okay, so Jennifer, so Monster Quiz, I can't add the visuals. Sorry, I sometimes get confused. Many of those gamification aspects, though, within Lumio, you are able to add visuals. The matching, the super sorts, all of those types of things, you can definitely add visuals on. So I apologize for that one. Okay. Kim, multiplication matching games with the students I model in class and then share the link. So it's a great way to do that as well. Okay. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to kick you all out of this. And we're going to jump over into Nearpod. So those are some examples. And I really tried to highlight things that you would do specifically within Lumio, like the collaboration and doing all of the going back and forth between the independent and the group work and being able to push things out that way. But Nearpod also has some unique features that are going to allow our students to connect with our content in a little with some more interactivity, which of course is going to increase what's going on. Excuse me. All right, I'm going to go ahead and drop this link. One thing that I really like here, you'll see on my screen as I drop the link for the Nearpod into the chat for you. For those of you that co-teach, a benefit to Nearpod is the ability now to actually turn on that co-teacher link now. So you can have 2 teachers working through. So as we think about maybe we're working with a special ed teacher or a reading teacher, maybe our ELL teacher, they have the ability and they can get that data and they can get that information as we go through too, which again is going to allow our students to get that support that they need a little bit faster as we go through. So we are going to pretend, and I'm going to go ahead and pin this link for you as well, just in case anybody gets kicked out. We are going to pretend that we are looking at a teacher slide right now. All right. Now, again, I'm going to be showing this from the teacher perspective here on my screen. You're going to have the student perspective on yours. I want to point out too, as we go through here, keep in mind, you for either Lumio or Nearpod, you don't have to display anything. So because it's right in front of the students on their devices. So they both make great options for small group work. Pulling them back to your reading table. You can actually bring your laptop with you, have your students join the Chromebooks, and they're going to be able to interact and work and model and do, whether it's they're marking up the text or their graphic organizers with you in small group, and you would still have that ability to see what they're doing and be able to model for them as we go through. And maybe a way that you hadn't considered before. I'm also going to say the dreaded, virtual instructional days. Okay. As you can see here, obviously Nearpod and Lumio will work really well for those as well. So we're going to pretend that this is a teacher slide. Now, one of the benefits to Nearpod that we really like is this ability that we can take certain slides and turn them into student paced, even though as a whole, I as the teacher am still controlling it. So this particular activity comes from grade 5. Teaching point 3.2 to be exact, and it's where they are working on comparing settings. Now, I want you to pretend for a moment that you have a Venn diagram in front of you, one of those triplet Venn diagrams. And I'm doing this on purpose because I want to point out that even though we're using technology, we can still have that aspect of written work as well. They can still have some paper and pencil. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set you loose here. And I'm going to give you the ability to move through 4, 5, 6, and 7 without me. Okay. And I'm going to give you just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Okay. Notice it highlights them in yellow there for me, so I know where we are. This is a major benefit when we think about, and again, connecting settings, when we think about places with our students, whether it's we're talking about a setting, within our language arts piece. Maybe we're talking about science. There's a science lesson that talks about weather in Annapolis, and there's pictures of Annapolis that you're supposed to display one by one to the students. But here within Nearpod, we have the ability to do those virtual field trips. So these first 3 slides are 360-degree images. And think about, you have a triplet three-way Venn diagram in front of you, and you're traveling through these 3 soccer fields, these 3 settings of a story, and trying to make those comparisons. All right, so I'll give you just a moment. To do that. I'm going to point out that all 3 of these virtual field trips, as they call them in Nearpod, were built in. I didn't have to do anything special. I just searched in Nearpod for soccer fields, because that is actually one of the settings in the story that they're supposed to look at. So in terms of low prep, it was very low prep. Okay. I'm going to point out to you very quickly, it's interesting how many of you have immediately just started typing an answer. Did anybody realize that on that short answer that I made it available that you could do an audio recording? Okay. So again, just from that accessibility standpoint, from that differentiation standpoint, one thing I like to point out sometimes when we think about working with our students in text and our curriculum, it's very heavy written language. Again, students need to be able to know how to write and express themselves in written language. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but sometimes it's hard to tease out then. Is it that they don't understand the concept that I'm trying to teach them? In this case, comparing settings. Or are they struggling with the written language and being able to express themselves in a sentence format? So by giving the students the opportunity or the option to do the audio recording, you're going to be able to give them an additional way, and helps you tease out where they need to be, where they're going, where you need to work on in the comprehension of the content or in the actual written language part. Well, yes, Sarah. When you download, they all come down just like they would images and the drawlets do. When you export those report files, they come down as a separate file within the zip file, if you will. So you get the spreadsheets with everything, but then you have all those audio files that you can listen to independently as well. Okay. Now, I did this as a short answer, as we have talked about in the past. What I love about this, when we think about, I can push these answers out to everybody so that you're going to be able to share. Again, to me, when I come in and do this, the nice thing is it's going to be, I'm going to turn off the student paste here for a moment so I have the ability to do this. I can come in here, you're going to see it on my screen because I'm presenting with you, but I can go ahead and I can share out the answers for what everybody said, and it's anonymous on your screen. But now again, we're going to have that ability to talk about as a class what people thought. Did they include details from the images that they had? Did they go through and explain themselves? So we have that ability, again, when we think about that connecting with text piece, we can now, I have real examples that I can show and very quickly go out, and it can be anonymous for the student. They're not having to bring their paper up and stick it under the document camera or raising their hand. So again, I have that whole student response. And I have that ability, again, to share, and we can discuss what individual people used to do. I used to put up the answers under the document camera. Actually, if I'm really going far back, under an overhead projector. Yes, I have been around that long. And you got to cover up the name at the top of the page, but everyone still knows everybody's handwriting, right? And of course, you're still going to have kids say, "Hey, that was my answer." But the ability to use the technology to be able to do that anonymously, it's okay if it didn't submit. Don't worry about it. Excuse me, is a big improvement over those old school type things, if you will. But we're still going to get the same benefit of that. All right. So now for this next one here, I don't need to share this anymore. This is actually a brand new activity that I came across in the social studies curriculum. This is for fourth graders, if I recall correctly, doing the oh gosh, my brain just went back. War of Independence, or yes. So my brain just completely went blank. And this is a letter that the teacher is supposed to read aloud to the students, and they're supposed to determine who wrote this. Was it a colonist, or was it a British loyalist? Now, in the story, pretend I have already read this to you, ignoring the fact that in here somewhere it actually does say the British soldiers. I don't think I remember. Yeah, the orders of the British soldiers. We're going to pretend I remember to take that out like I was supposed to. And then students are supposed to mark up the text. And then they have these labels that they're supposed to lay over top of each paragraph, and to see which events correspond to those individual paragraphs. Again, more cutting. Okay, more grabbing out the scissors, more paper for you to have to distribute. But in this case, this is going to be our drag and drop option that we have within Nearpod. So you all have this on your screen. You are able to come in here. The instructions are up at the top, making those connections between the events and the letter. Drag the events to the part of the letter you connected them to. You also have all of your marking up options down here at the bottom. You have your highlighters, you have your pens. So you as a student can come through here and you can do all of those marking up, circle what things jumped out at you, and then you can drag your headers right over the top. So I'm going to give you a moment to explore that and to do that. I'm going to hop over into my teacher thing. And I do want to point out, you do have that immersive reader option over up in that top corner, Sarah. It's only going to read at this point this information because this came in as an image, but it would read the directions, and it will also read the tags for the students as well. Keeping in mind, I can come in here at any point and I can give you feedback. And if you all haven't noticed or learned this about Nearpod yet, when you give feedback on drawlets and drag and drop like activities like this, there are little stickers now that you can come in and add to the student page. Who doesn't love a good sticker? Okay, digital stickers. So again, going back to that idea of giving immediate feedback to, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. My fault. Let me go back for you. Giving you the ability to come in here and give them that immediate feedback as they are working. I could certainly still draw. That was supposed to be a circle. I'm not sure why that turned into that. But you have that ability that you can come in here. I could certainly add text and say, try again. Sorry, everything is starting to lag here for a moment. Alicia, you did fine. I'm just using you here as an example. So my apologies for that one. But again, and that's immediately showing up on the student's work. Does that mean I still can't walk behind them and look at what they're doing? Of course not. I can certainly still do that. But then we have the ability here, again, for me to go back later if I need to. And again, just like I had before, I can come in here and I can share. Oh, I did it again. So word of caution when you're in here, and I do this every time I demonstrate this, and you would think I would have learned by now. Make sure you use the arrows that are here at the top of the page, not the arrows over onto the right. That's what keeps kicking me out to that next page. So I apologize for that. But I do have the ability to share this with the class. And what I like, and actually, Carla, I'm going to throw some feedback on here for you just real quick to demonstrate this. You can make all these annotations and notes for your students that they did great, or maybe they need to go back and work with this. And then when I share it with the class, I can decide whether I want them to share it with my feedback or without my feedback. So it can still be, so then the students can discuss, and again, the student that, whose work that you're sharing doesn't have to be embarrassed. That if they got it right or wrong, or maybe thought something different than somebody else, we can have that class discussion. But the student still got the immediate feedback from me as well. Okay. Or I could do and share the feedback, and then we can have that class discussion about why I, as the teacher, made those comments or said this was correct or incorrect. And again, it's all anonymous. All right. So again, just that more interaction with the text. So the students are going to have the ability to really be able to mark it up and in that digital format and be able to get a little bit more out of it. Literacy Pro Text and iReady. So Desiree, do you mean that in terms of putting it into Nearpod, will that work? Or the immersive reader? I'm a little confused on what you mean for that.
Yeah, we use the Literacy Pro,
Correct.
but I wasn't quite sure if we could be able, because the students actually can't read the Literacy Pro either, because there's not that option.
Right.
So, is there a way to transfer that text into here so that the students can, interact with it more? Because with marking the text and
so screenshot.
Okay.
Screenshots are the best way to do that.
Okay.
Take a screenshot, because this is all done with images. This is when you do a drawlet slide, when you do the drag and drop, all it is an image. So what I did in the case of this particular slide, it was in a Google Doc in the curriculum. I literally copied and pasted it into a Google slide, made it fit on the Google slide. I had to adjust the sizing of the font a little bit, and I downloaded that slide as actually, I didn't even have to do that. You can download the slide as an image if you wanted. However, because I was doing it in Google Slides, and we have the Nearpod extension in Google Slides, this is the beautiful thing about that. When I select make this a drag it option, no, wait a minute, hold on, I'm getting myself confused. That's when I did it as the drawlet. The drawlets you can do right from there, and you don't have to have the image.
Right.
For the drag and drop, you have to submit the image as a background. So I took the slide, I downloaded just that one slide as a picture. And then when I created it within the Nearpod window for the drag and drop, I was able to add that as a background image.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm getting myself confused, guys. I do apologize for that. But so for drawlets, you can take the Google Slides. It immediately turns it into the drawlet, whatever is on the background. I didn't do it just a plain drawlet. I wanted to show you that drag and drop, because that's a feature that a lot of people don't know about. But you can still do it pretty simply and easily. And one thing I'd like to point out about the drag and drop as well, that's a question we get a lot in terms of, especially as we're working into testing season right now, students needing practice with drag and drop. And so here's a way that we can do some drag and drops. These particular drag and drops were text. I can tell you, you can do it with images as well. You have to pick one or the other. You can't have both, but it works really well for, if you were doing sounds and you wanted to sort the sounds out. Again, kind of going into math, you could certainly do some sorting with math with, what are prime numbers and what are composite numbers, mixed numbers and regular fractions. Sorry, my kid's learning fractions right now, so my brain immediately went to fractions on that one. But you can do lots of different things with those drag and drops. Again, it can be images or it can be text. Okay. But we know that's a skill that a lot of people ask us about because they have to do the drag and drop on MCAP. This is a great way to give them that testing practice for that. Okay. And yes, Patricia, the snipping tool, capture text as an image as well. I use it all the time. The one that I like to use actually is the Windows Shift S. And I'll drop that in the chat for you. That's a great way to get a quick screenshot. Windows key and the S key. That will give you a great image that you can use in any of these types of activities as well. Okay. And I have to go back and think, it's been a while since I did that one Lumio slide with the artful thinking routine. I can't remember if I was able to just grab that image from the slide deck that was there, or if I had to snip it. I may have had to snip that one too, and then just upload that into Lumio. Okay. But with that, we are running out of time. So I'm just going to go ahead and wrap things up. And of course, now that you've all seen this last slide, this is just a snapshot of ways that we can use Lumio and Nearpod to get the text in front of our students so they can interact with it a little bit more, connect with that text in better ways. Again, the idea being that it's not just one person up at the front of the screen being able to mark it up and use it, but also that you can get the data that you need and the information to go back for reteaching and for extension, and again, thinking about those school improvement plans and SLOs for that. For resources, obviously teacher intro to digital tools and student intro to digital tools, and that you always have access to Sam and I, as well as the rest of the team. We are happy to come out and work with you, work with the school, work with your teachers on how to actually create these types of activities. I actually just did it with Riviera Beach. I know Sam has been doing it with Manor View. She just was out there this week on some of these types of things. So we are available. I know I also sent an email out. We do have sub money available too. If you are able to get subs at your school, we're happy to come out and do that during with a sub day, or even if you're interested, again, after school collaborative planning, things like that. It's actually really not that difficult because so many of our lessons are already within Google slide formats, and both Nearpod and Lumio allow us to take those slides and just convert them over. So just keep that in the back of your mind. All right. With that, I've got 2 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions for me? Anything else? Already on overload, and you've only gone through the keynote in one session? Caitlin?
Yeah, are you able to share both this Lumio and Nearpod so we could use this as a reference to share with our teachers?
Absolutely. So these will both be in the folder that we'll give access to. They'll be on the session catalog once with the recording. So you'll have these. We'll absolutely be able to share those. Patrick just dropped the Google form in the chat. So if you all would take a moment and fill that out as well, I would certainly appreciate it, that attendance form. Any other questions? Does Nearpod allow students the ability to go back into the slides after the lesson is over? Great question, Dr. Garlick. So we can take Nearpod and you can do it either as a student paste or as a teacher paste. Because of the way Nearpod works, if you give them the student paste link, they're not going to be able to see any kind of annotations. Because it all does it with a code and the code changes. Now, what I can do though is up here in the menu, when I come in, there is a way, and you're going to bear with me. I can turn on that student piece. There is a way. I have to double check. And actually, am I in with Asia today? I don't think I'm in with Asia. I believe you can get a link that allows them to finish this, but I have to double check for you on that one. All right. So I will make a note of that and I'll get back to you.
I did that before. So if you start in teacher pace, right, and then you switch it at the end to student pace, your students can go in and finish with your annotation.
Do you still have to keep it up, Bonnie?
I do not. They were able to go in afterwards. I used this during the snow day as well. Like I started online and then left it up, and they were able to go in and access everything. That's what I experienced. Now, you guys experienced something else, please share. But that's one thing that I actually did experience.
I believe it can be done, but I will definitely double check for you and I'll get back to you. Kim, in terms of the shared libraries, we actually have shared libraries. Not for Lumio, that's a paid feature that we don't have at this point, but for Nearpod, we do. If you go in, you have it as a school. So if within the school you have a shared library as well, if there is something that you want to be put in through from the district level, we have a district level shared library, but that would have to get coordinator approval. Okay. It's all coming down to, you know, teaching our programs with fidelity. Right. All right. With that, you guys enjoy your next sessions. Hopefully I'll see you throughout the day.
Kerri, is there a link for attendance?
Yes, Patrick dropped it in there. It should be pinned. I'll grab it.
Yeah, I did pin it to the chat, so it should be there.
And I'll just drop it in there again.
Here, Kerri, I got it.
Thanks. And I closed the folder that had everything in it. Does Neuro allow the students the ability to go back? Okay, I already covered that one. Okay, yeah, I slipped back up for that one. Okay. Yeah. And so you would just close the one world and circle the other. All right.